Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new session, a brand new week. Today we're going to be diving into DSN205, that's user research and common UX deliverables. And I had mentioned it the last time we spoke, that was on Wednesday and Friday, that this will be the next topic that we're going to be talking about. And yeah, I'm excited to talk through this with you. And hopefully by the end of this session, you would have been able to grab one or two things, and then we can have some more discussions around these during the course of the week. All right. So, user research and common UX deliverables. What's user research all about? Why is it important? What are the different methods? What are the different approaches? And what are the qualities of a good UX researcher? So, we're going to be covering all those. Without further ado, let's dive right in. So, if there's something about me you should have noticed in every single class that we hold, is that I like starting each topic with a quote, a very relatable quote to whatever it is that we're learning. And we're going to be starting today's own with a quote from Chris Mears from UXR that says, "User research is how you would know your product or service will work in the real world with real people. It's where you will uncover or validate the user's needs, which should form the basis of what you're designing." Let's take that again. User research is how you would know your product or service will work in the real world with real people. It's where you will uncover or validate the user needs, which should form the basis of what you're designing. So basically, what Chris is trying to say here is that everything that would form the basis of what you're designing should come from user research, and you should never dive into designing or starting to design a product without conducting some proper user research, because it's from the feedback that you get from the results of your research that you'll be able to design and build a product that real people can actually use. Because one thing we do a lot as designers is that we come up with imaginary problems for imaginary people, and we spend days, weeks, months trying to build out that imaginary solution. But when it comes to real life products, that approach is not going to be feasible. That approach is not going to work. So basically, what Chris is trying to tell us is that user research is extremely important, and the importance cannot be overemphasized. Okay, now that we've talked about, or we've discussed what Chris has to tell us, let's dive um, immediately into the definition. So, what is user research? User research is the methodic study of target users, including their needs and pain points. So, designers have the sharpest possible insights to make the best designs. All right, and we went on to say user research. User researchers use various methods to expose problems and design opportunities and find crucial information to use in their design. Now, let's come back to that first part and really dive deep into it and talk about it. It says user research is a methodic study of target users, including their needs and pain points. So designers have the sharpest possible insights to make the best designs. I mentioned something last week where I was trying to explain that user research is not really complicated. Someone had asked the question, and I was trying to really break it down that when it comes to user research, it's not complicated at all. You just have to think through a process. It's a process, right? So basically, in order for you to make designs that are scalable, designs that are usable, designs that work, designs that actually solve problems. As you remember, we said design is all about problem solving. In order for you to actually make these designs, you have to, number one, think about your users. Right, you need to think about them. You're designing for them, you're not designing for yourself. So your users are very, very important. You need to think about them. You need to include their needs and their pain points in whatever it is that you're thinking about, right? So it's this process of including them, thinking about them, carrying them along. That's where user research comes in, right? Because it's easy to sit down somewhere and say, "Oh, I want to design an ag tech app or a fintech app today that does A, B, C, X, Y, Z," and then you dive deep into it. But if you're going to design an ag tech or a fintech app that actual people are going to use, you can't just sit down in the comfort of your office or your workspace and start working on those things. You need to actually factor in the pain points that these people that you want to design for are actually going through, and their needs, right? So basically that's like the summary of user research. It's the study of your users. You're studying them, you're trying to understand them, you're trying to know what they need, how you can help them, right? Because that's what you're here for. You're here to solve, I mean, provide a solution to their problem. You're here to help them, right? So user research is just the methodic study of target users. But methodic is strategic, the how, like how you study target users and include their needs and pain points so that you can come up with the best solution to their problems. Right. So, yes, let's move on. Now, when it comes to user research, it actually splits into two subsets, right? There is the qualitative research and the quantitative research. Now, they want to sound familiar, right? But they are not, right? There's qualitative research and quantitative research. And basically, we're going to be talking about these two and how they tie into, and why they're important, right? So when you, from at first glance, when you see qualitative research, the first thing that comes to mind is quality, right? Qualitative research, quality. And when you think quantitative, right, you think quantity. So obviously, at first glance, when we're saying these two, one is obviously talking about the fact that in this category, in this aspect, we focus more about the quality of the research that we're getting. Now we're going to dive deep into this as we move on. I just want to give a subtext into this first, a context into this first, right? So when we're talking qualitative, it's obvious that we're talking about the quality, right? So qualitative research gives more emphasis on the quality of data that you're going to be getting from the people you're researching about. While quantitative research focuses more on volume, right? You're dealing with more people, more data, like volume, right? So why one deals with the quality of the research, one deals with the volume. Now let's dive further into their actual definitions, and then we can see the difference a little bit more clearly. Now, let's talk about qualitative research. Qualitative research focuses on the quality or meaning of an end user's experience. Like I said a few moments ago, it focuses on the quality, right? So basically, with qualitative research method, you can collect an in-depth understanding of individual users, right? With the qualitative research, you are basically diving deep into understanding the nature of human experience. So the question is, why are these people doing what they do? Like what really motivates them to, what really motivates them to complete a task, right? So when you're thinking about this subtext of user research, you're really asking the deep questions like why why, right? If you're trying to design if you're trying to design a product, right, for a particular niche, for instance, let's say you're designing a product let's say you're designing a product for let's call it farmers, right? A product that helps farmers do trying to perform a qualitative user research. You are going to dive deep into why farmers take specific actions, which means you're going to spend a lot of time, right, with individuals. So when it comes to qualitative user research, it doesn't necessarily deal with so many people at once, right? You can have a focus group of just 8 people or 5 people, and then with those people, you are actually studying them. You're paying complete attention to them. They are your focus for the next couple of maybe weeks if you want to if you want to carry out this process for weeks. So they are your focus points. They are the people that you're talking to, right? And basically, what you're trying to understand from them is why. Like, what is motivating you to do this thing? Like, why are you doing it? If you're doing something in a particular way, why is that? I'm trying to understand you in depth so I can work on a product that actually solves your need, a product that is tangible to you. I hope you understand the angle qualitative is coming from. So it banks on high quality data. You need to spend quality time, right, with these people in order to understand why they do what they do. Now, if we move on to talk about quantitative research, basically the quantitative research focuses on how many, how often, how much, right? It focuses on what. So why the other one focuses on why, this focuses on what. And when it comes to quantitative research, why it's now the fact that we said that I mean qualitative research focuses on quantity doesn't mean quantitative research is useless. It's not, right? But when you think about the first step that people take when they want to build products, a lot of times, and you see people sending out surveys, right? Is a perfect example of a survey is a perfect example of a quantitative research, because you're sending a single survey to hundreds of people, right? And you're gathering so much data. So if I'm trying to build a product right now and I come up with a couple of questions in my survey document and I'm asking you, um, do you use a fintech product? Is Does any day go by where you don't use a fintech product? If you do, what fintech product do you use? What particular feature stands out for you? Would you pay a certain amount if we're going to solve this problem for you? You know, those kind of questions that people put in surveys that they send out, and they get hundreds of people to fill those surveys. Now, by the time they get those data back, those data comes back measurable. You can measure them. I mean, a lot of times people use Google Docs for the likes of these things, right? I mean, these surveys. So obviously, when the responses come, Google Docs, Google already helps us to separate them, gives us a lot of responses as charts and everything, and then we can actually measure the data that we've gotten. Unlike when it comes to qualitative research, where you don't send out massive surveys. You are dealing with a select group of people, and because you're spending so much time on them, sometimes the data that comes in from qualitative surveys is not necessarily measurable. You can use it, but it's not mathematical. You can't start calculating, 50% of this. No, right? Data that comes in from there are more theoretical, they are more descriptive. But data that comes in from quantitative research are more statistical, they are more measurable. I hope you understand these differences now. I hope it's getting clearer. So basically, these are the two subtexts of um, quantitative research. Now let's move on. When you're thinking about user research, always keep it at the back of your mind that um, it comes in one of two forms. It's either attitudinal, like hearing what people say, or behavioral, observing what people do, right? So if we're going to break this back down into the two subjects that we just talked about, attitudinal is going to fall under qualitative, right? I mean quantitative, where we send out surveys and the people tell us their responses. So when we get their responses, it's more like that's what they are saying to us, right? It's what they are saying. But then there is the qualitative, where it's not necessarily about what people say, it's about what they do. Right. So if we are studying a select group of people and we're telling them, use these products and we want to observe you use them, basically they are going to be doing everything that they do and we are watching them. So we're going to read their body language, we're going to read their expressions, we're basically going to observe everything that they do, right? So generally, user research basically falls into these two approaches, is either attitudinal or behavioral. We just decided to add this, so just so it helps you understand what we've been trying to explain a little bit further. Now let's talk about integrating research into the design process, because really that's what we need every single one of us to be able to do, right? We need every single one of us to be able to understand the different methods of UX research, or user research, as you might call it. And we need to be able to integrate them into your design process. Now, the first thing you need to understand is that user research is a continuous part of the product development cycle, right? That's the first and foremost thing that you need to understand, is that user research is continuous. It doesn't stop, right? Even there's nothing like, when we wanted to study design, I did user research. Now there's nothing for me to do user research again. It doesn't work that way, right? And the goal of user experience research is really to prioritize the user, right? Number one, we want to prioritize the users. Number two, we want to make sure that the business needs are met, It's that is also very, very important. So basically, user research or UX research, you know what, for the sake of the rest of this session, I'm going to be using user research and UX research interchangeably, right? So UX research can help us bridge the gap between what a business thinks the users need and what they actually need. So a stakeholder can reach out to you and say, "Oh, I want to employ your services. I need you to help me build a product for this particular users. This is problem that they are facing, and this is the solution that we want to build for them." It's very easy for a stakeholder to come and tell you that, but if you don't conduct a proper UX research, you would not be able to really find out if what your business think the users needs is actually what they need, right? So we've been repeating this. I'll keep on repeating it so that it sticks. User research is very, very important because it's what helps you identify what your users actually need before you go and create an expensive, time-consuming product that nobody can actually use, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants to waste money. Nobody wants to waste your time. Even if you're in a company and then you're being paid a crazy amount, monthly, yearly, and none of the products you ever build see the light of day, you are going to feel a sense of lack, a sense of, sadness at some point, because even though you're getting the money, you're not seeing the impact of the work that you're doing. Yeah, so I have to digress a little bit. Let's come back to where we were. We're saying user research is a continuous part of the product development life cycle, and it takes place before, during, and after the design phase. So that's what I was talking about earlier. Design UX research is not something you just do before you design, before you start designing your product. It's something you do before you start. It's a continuous process that you also have to do during, and also it's something that you still do, excuse me, after the design phase. Now, you might want to ask yourself, how do I know what comes before, what comes during, and what comes after? You might want to ask yourself, why do I have to do designs also during and after? We're going to talk about that in a bit. So let's proceed to the next slide. Now, we just talked about the fact that UX research is something that you do before, during, and after. That means, and we're diving into the part where we're talking about the types of user research, right? So basically, we have three types of user research. We have the foundational research, right? Which, based on this definition that we have in this first bullet point, is a research that takes place before anything is designed. So basically, that's what we've been saying. Before you start designing, that research that you do before you start designing is what is called foundational research. Foundational research. And some people also call it strategic or generative research. Basically, you're generating first-hand information that would guide you on what the next steps are going to be. So keep that at the back of your mind. One of the types of user research that we have is foundational research. The other one is called the design research, because that's the one that you do during your design process. So the research that you conduct before your design process starts is called the foundational research or the generative research. The user research that you conduct during your design process is called the design research. And then the third type of user research is called the post-launch research. This is the research that comes or that happens after you've launched your product. Right. So those are the three types of user research that we have: the foundational one, the one that comes before; the design research, the one that comes during; and the post-launch research, the one that comes after. Now, for every single one of these types of user research, there are different methods that falls under them. So we're also going to be talking about that in a bit. But just keep that at the back of your mind that user research, like a short recap, user research is categorized into two subtexts, and they are the qualitative research and the quantitative research, right? And then we have three types of user research, not categories this time, types. We have the foundational research, we have the design research, and we have the post-launch research. All right, let's move on. Yeah, let's dive deeper into talking about the foundational research, right? So basically, the foundational research is always done before we start designing, like we said, and basically within the product life cycle, right? The foundational research happens during the brainstorming. Basically, it's like the first stage to help you empathize with your users, really understand their needs. Like we've been saying since before now, you cannot start without really trying to understand your users. So what this research does is that it helps you empathize with them, put yourself in their shoes, really understand what they are going through, and it helps you, it inspires you to create new design direction. Right. So basically, it's under this stage that people usually do things like user personas or user stories. You'd have heard that before now, or you heard some designers talking about that. Oh, I'm trying to come up with user personas for this. I'm trying to write user stories for that. This is where methods, UX research methods like that come in, right? And foundational research answers the question, what should we build? What should we build? So basically, if you don't know what you're going to build, you cannot start building. That's how it works. And that's where foundational research comes in. It helps you answer the question, what should we build? And under foundational research, that's when you ask questions like, what are the problems? And what problems are our users facing? How can we solve them? Like, am I aware of my own biases? Am I able to filter them as I do research? So basically, it's like this. The first question says, what are the user problems? That's pretty self-explanatory. You're asking yourself, what problems are the users facing? How can I solve them? Then the second one says, the third one says, am I aware of my own biases? Now, as individuals, every one of us have biases. We have preferences. Biases also mean preferences. We have preferences. I would rather use this than that. I would rather work with this than that. I would rather go here than there. But the question is, am I aware of my own biases? There's something I tell people sometimes, or a feedback I give my team or colleagues whenever they ask me to, help them make a decision and everything. I tell them point blank that, look, I'm biased towards this. All right. If you're telling me to choose between products or brands or something, I would just tell you straight, look, I'm biased towards this. So if I'm telling you that this is the best, it's probably because of my bias, right? So the question is, am I aware of my own biases and am I able to filter them as I do research? So these are the questions that foundational research asks, right? And like I said, there are different research method under each of these types of user research. So now that we've covered the definition of foundational research and we've covered the kind of questions that people ask under this particular research, we can now go on to look at the methods. Please do not forget that the goal of foundational research is to help you define the problem you're trying to design a solution for, right? That's the goal. And basically, it helps you find out what the solution is by helping you figure out what the users needs and how to address those needs with your products, really. So when you're thinking foundational research, you're thinking, oh, before I start designing, what am I trying to build? Like, what should we build? Like, even when we figured out what we're trying to build, what are the user problems, really? How can we solve them? Right. So those are the kind of questions that foundational research answers. All right, let's move on. Now let's talk about the methods of foundational research. Like I said, there are different methods, and it is under foundational research that you conduct interviews, right? We know what interviews are. Basically, this is the method that people use to get in-depth information of people's opinions. So if somebody is interviewing you about something, they're trying to get your opinion. They're trying to get your thoughts, your experiences, your feelings, right? What you think about this particular thing. That's what they're trying to ask you. So basically, they're trying to get in-depth information. It's under this type of user research that people also conduct surveys. We talked about surveys not too long ago, right? Where you ask hundreds of people, so many people, the same question in order to understand, what most of them think about it, right? So if I come online and I gather a group of 100 people and I ask them, oh, which do you prefer, Android or iOS, right? And of course, if 100 people feels, we know that a higher number of people are going to select a particular product than the other, right? So basically, that's what surveys are: sending a large group of people, um, you're asking them the same questions and you're trying to see how much of them will select choice A and how much you select choice B. And there's also something called focus groups, right? So if you've not heard of focus groups before, focus groups are a small group of people that are gathered so that their reactions can be studied. So think about this way. Imagine that um, you imagine that as a business, right, or as a brand, you just launched a new feature or a new product, but before you push to the public, you decided that, you know what, let's see how the public are going to, let's see how people are going to accept it first before we push it to the, before we push it out to the public. And then you gather a team of like 8 people, and then you give them the product to test, and you allow them discuss their perspective, right? And you leave them to, you leave them to talk, you leave them to explore the product, and all you're doing is studying them, right? So that's what focus groups does. And something with focus groups is that they are not, anybody conducting user research using focus groups tries as much as possible not to influence their decisions, not to influence their thoughts. So whenever a focus group is going through something, even if they have questions, they have to figure it out on their own, right? They cannot ask the person conducting the research questions and the person is going to answer. So basically, that's what focus groups are. And the essence of this is really to get people's perspective on a particular design or a particular um, feature or a particular conversation. All right. And then there is something called competitive audit, right? Competitive audit is basically you reviewing your competitors' strengths and weaknesses, right? As a product designer that wants to work on a product, maybe you want to work on a fintech app that also, that people can also use to save money, that people can also use to invest and everything. Obviously, there are the likes of Piggyvest, there are the likes of RiceVest. There's a lot of them out there today. Now the question is, how are you going to know what to do better if you don't study your competitor, if you don't audit your competitor's products, right? So that's what competitive audit does, and this is where people do it before they even start designing the product. They research their competitors. You are supposed to research your competitors, and you're supposed to find out about their strengths and weaknesses, right? So that you can understand what they are doing, what they've done, and you'll be able to figure out if what you had in mind was going to work, or if you have to switch to something else. And then there's the diary studies, something called diary studies. Basically, this is a research method that people used to collect qualitative data, right? And I specifically said qualitative because think about what diaries do. People write down in diaries. Sometimes you read diaries and it contains accounts of people's lives, right? So it's obvious that when you think diary, it's long stories, a lot of data, a lot of information, right? So when we talk about diary studies, we mean um, it's a method that people used to collect qualitative data about their users' behaviors, about their activities, and the rest of that. And here's how it works, right? Anybody that wants to conduct a diary study, basically what they do is that they they take time to log every activity that you know um their user is exhibiting. Do you understand? Like it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and it's a lot of data that comes from diary studies. But basically, that's just it, right? A method that is used to collect data about user behaviors, activities, and basically experiences over time, right? So these are some of the UX research method that comes with the foundational research. So basically, everything we've talked about here, there could be a lot more, but everything we've talked about here are things that people do before they get to the design phase. So you have to conduct interviews, you have to conduct surveys, focus groups, whatever it is that you need to do, audit your competitors. But you have to do these things before you start designing. Now, we are pretty much done with the foundational research aspects. We'll be moving on to the design research now. I hope you've been following so far. Um, Now let's talk about design research, right? Design research is done while you design. We've talked about this before, right? So here's the thing: within the product development cycle, right? Design research happens during the design stage to help you inform your designs. So it's very easy for you to get carried away with your design. It's very easy for you to just start designing and then you go with the flow. But what design research does is that it calls you back to order. It calls you back to order. It helps you, it reminds you of why you're designing, and helps you keep the need of your users in mind, right? Because if you're just designing and you're going with the flow, at the end of the day you might risk designing out of point, and that's something that is possible. A lot of people have designed out of point at the end of the products that don't work. So you don't want that. You want to ensure that even during your design phase you're still doing research, so that each time you create a new version of your design, or each time you create a new feature, right, you are able to properly evaluate the work that you've done. Do you understand? You're able to probably evaluate. Basically, what design research is asking, the question, the number one question design research is asking is, how should we build it? How? Like, how? The first thing about the first one we talked about, which is the foundation research, said, what should we build? Right? That's foundation. Now that we've identified what to build, design research is asking the question, how should we build it? And basically, if you look at the kind of questions that come with that design research, it's going to make things a bit more clearer. So questions like, how was the experience using the prototype? Right? How easy was it to use, and why was it easy for you? Did you encounter any challenges? So think about it this way: you've started your design process, right? And now you are at a point where you're you're actually designing some part of it, but you need to be sure that what you're designing works. So when you work on a flow or a couple of new features, right, you get a couple of people, testers, to try it out, prototype it, and give it to them. Hey, go through this, what do you think? So when you're going through now, you start asking questions. Oh, how was the experience with the prototype? Right, were you able to figure it out? Was it difficult for you? Why was it difficult? Why were we having issues with this? Did you encounter any challenges? Right. So it's questions like this that will now make you, it's responses you get from questions like this that will make you go back to the drawing board and tell yourself, oh, okay, based on what these people say, this is what I need to do. Based on what those people are saying, this is what I need to do. Right. And that's why this is also very important, because the goal of design research is to inform how the product should be built. Right. It tells you how the product should be built. And it basically gives design researchers um, design research basically gives designers the chance to reduce the problems that can occur when users are interacting with their prototype. So if I'm working on a feature right now and I make a prototype for it and I share it with you, and then you test it and there was a problem and you complained and I fixed it, right? It's gonna save me. It's gonna be so beneficial for me that I fixed it then, rather than having to now go publish and launch a product that is going to give people headache in the future. Right. So the amount of design research that you conduct will vary. Basically, it won't be the same. The amount of research you conduct will vary depending on the work you're doing and what you're building. Right. So if it really depends on the scale of your project. Sometimes if the project is a micro project, your design research probably will not be as extensive as when you're designing products for millions of users. Right. So that's basic summary about what design research is all about. Now let's go on to talk about um, the methods of UX research that falls under this type of research. And basically, we have the likes of A/B testing. Now, if you don't understand what A/B testing is basically a method that evaluates and compares two different aspects of a product to see which one is more effective. So think about it this way. If a marketing team, for instance, let's just use them because I think that will be very easy to relate to. If a marketing team wants to launch a landing page, right? They have something to advertise. A sales team or a marketing team has something to advertise and they want to launch a landing page. And then the hero section of of the landing page says, um, um are you facing any trouble with your, let's say they're advertising help with taxes, and they say things like, are you facing trouble with your taxes? We are here to help. Right, that's what the heading text of the euro section says. And then maybe they launched that and they were not getting as much sign-ups from people are not really paying attention to the site. They are not applying and stuff like that. So the team can now decide that, oh, you know what, we have a landing page, right? Let's create a duplicate of this particular landing page. And instead of, are you facing problems with your taxes, get in touch, let's use something else that says, we can help you tackle problems before they become actual problems. Do you understand? It's the same landing page, but we're basically changing the heading text to say something else. And what we will now do is to launch both and see which one people resonate with more. Do you understand? That's what A/B testing is. It helps you compare two different aspects. Now, the aspects that are different here are just the hero sections, right? We're trying to see which one attracts people more. So that's what A/B testing does, and it works across, but doesn't just work for landing page, even products. If you're building a mobile app, digital products generally, and then you need to test a feature, or you need to test a screen, or you need to test a flow, you can A/B test it, create duplicates, change one or two things, and have people actually explore both, see which one people resonate with more, see which one people really enjoy more, see which one people are complaining about more, and from there you can figure out what works. So that's what A/B testing is. And then we have something called the cafe or guerrilla studies, right? So basically, what this method is about is by taking your prototype to a public domain. Imagine going to a cafe or a coffee shop or an eatery, a restaurant, wherever, and you went with your prototype, and you're giving random people the prototype to experience. Oh, can you go through this and let me know what your thoughts are? Right. So what that does is that it ensures that you have a random mix of people. You know that if you go to a place like a cafe or a coffee shop, you'll meet different people, like different people that might not even be from the same communities and stuff like that. So basically, what that helps you do is that you get an extensive test from random people, and you can use the data from or the results from that test to actually make a more informed decision with your design, right? Yeah, so that's what happens really. Just go out to the public and ask customers or ask people to just test your app or test your design for a couple of minutes and provide feedback. That's what the cafe or gorilla study is all about. And then we have something called card sorting. Now we probably should have seen something like this, but if we've not, imagine a sticky note, right? I'm pretty sure a lot of us have seen sticky notes before. But imagine a sticky note, and then you get a piece of it, and then you write um you put, what's it called? Yeah, you put labels on it, or you put labels on it. So basically, you are you're turning them you're turning them into, you're making them into categories. Like you're using cards to categorize different aspects of your design, right? And then once you're done making those labels, you now start sorting them together. So for instance, if um if you're designing a product, right, and then your product is supposed to do 100 things, right, or perform 100 function. So basically, what you do is that for each sticky note, you put one function, right? You write all the functions out, and once you've written those functions, you now start categorizing them together. So if function one, function 99, and function 100 falls under a category, I'm going to paste those sticky notes under a single column like that. Oh, they fall under the same category. And then I'm going to pick function 2, function 28, and function 30. If they fall under the same category, I'm going to like turn them into a row, like into another column rather. And that's how card sorting works. So basically, like, people also use this to categorize their design when they're doing research, um, so that they can be able to make more informed decisions. Right, that's how that works. And then there's something called intercepts. This is a research method that basically gathers that UX researchers use to gather feedback from users as they engage in activities being researched, right? So basically, think about intercepts as activities or user research that is conducted in the field, right? Basically, you are so how it works is that imagine that you're trying to build an app for farmers, right? So what happens is that you are going to go to a farm site. You're going to go to a farmland where farmers are actually working on site, right? And then you collect feedback from them as they're actually going about their activities. That's how this works. So basically, what that does is that you're seeing what they are doing, and you're able to get that feedback from that. right? And this way, you are not, you don't have to wait for people to tell you things. You can see it and make your own informed decisions from there. So basically, that's what intercepts are. So we've covered this. Now, like I said, there are a lot of methods of user research. There are a lot, a whole lot. But these are the few ones that we're going to be talking about under the second type of user research, which is the design research. Now we're going to be moving on to the last one, which is the third one, and that's the post-launch um research. And basically, post-launch research, as the name implies, is the research done after the design is complete and your product has launched. Right? We've talked about, um, excuse me, we've talked about foundational research, which is what you do, the research you conduct before the design. We've talked about design research, the um, which is the research you conduct during the design. And now this is the post-launch design. Um, Okay, so when we say post-launch design, what do we mean? We're talking about post-launch research. What do we mean? We're talking about research that is done after the design is complete and after your product has launched, right? So basically, the post-launch research answers a question. It answers a single question, and that question is, did we succeed? Right? My apologies. Yeah. So post-launch research answers the question, did we succeed? And basically, how that works is that you are asking yourself, oh, this product that we've just launched, right? Did it actually succeed? Did it succeed? Is it successful? Are people using it how they ought to use it? Right. So basically, the goal of the post-launch research is to understand how users experience the product, whether it was good or bad. You want to know, like we've spent so much time, so much resources, so much energy building this product. Now that we've put it out there, we want to know, did it actually, like, do you enjoy it? Do you understand how it's working? Like, is the experience good for you or not? All right. And basically, another reason why this is important is that it helps to check your product's performance against you're also trying to build, let's say, a fintech product that helps people save lock money, that helps people maybe pay bills, that helps people invest in real estate and all like that. And you already know that there's the likes of PiggyVest. So the question you're going to ask yourself is that after you've done all your research and you've done your design, you've launched a product, did we succeed? Are people actually using this product? Is our product actually better than that of our competitor? Like, is PiggyVest better than us, or ours is actually beating PiggyVest at least, right? So those are basically the kinds of question that comes when it comes to post-launch research. And another thing is that it tells you how your product is performing based on things like established metrics, right? Um, the usage, the satisfaction, the adoption. Are people satisfied? Are people using it? Are people actually adopting it? Because when we talk about adoption, stuff like, if I was using a particular banking app before, why should I switch to yours? Right? And people do that a lot. People port from one app to another, right? So the question is, are people actually porting to your app, or is your app just there and people are ignoring it? Right. So yeah, this particular user research method is what gives insight into what people think of your products and what they're experiencing, and if your product actually aligns with what you intended for it to do. Right. So let's go on to talk about some methods that falls under this post-launch research, and then we can, you know, move on to the next items, right? So, method of post-launch research, we have A/B testing is also here, right? A/B testing is also here because A/B testing not only comes in handy when you're still designing, it comes in handy when you're doing QA. That's QA comes after you build your product. That's quality assurance. So A/B testing is also important because sometimes you might put something out there, you've built the product, you've launched, right? But you're discovering that, oh, it looks like people are not really engaging with this particular aspect of the product. People are not really using this. Now, instead of you taking back everything, like taking your product back offline. You don't have to do that. So people cannot. It's companies can also A/B test, right? Create a make a duplicate and make some changes and see how people and launch that and see how people actually respond to that. So based on the data that you're gathering from the tool, you'll be able to tell which particular approach people resonate more with and which particular approach they actually don't they actually don't like, right? And then there's a lack of usability studies. So basically the question is, are they are people using it how we intended for it to be used? Right, you need to study your metrics, study your users. Are they really using it how we intended for them to use? Is it working for them? Are they adopting it? We've talked about this before, right? And then we have surveys. So in as much as surveys are conducted um the before the design process starts, surveys are also conducted after products are launched. We basically want to gather insight from people and ask them, look, this product that we just launched for you to use, are you enjoying it? Are you able to use it? Is it working for you? Right. So it's sometimes from people's feedback, you can see firsthand what they're actually experiencing, because they'll tell you that, oh, this app sucks, I don't like it, or this app is slow, it's lagging, it's closing on my phone. They will tell you a couple of things. And from those responses, you can actually gather feedback and make the necessary updates or necessary adjustments that you need to make. All right. And then there's the logs analysis. Right? Basically, this is a method that UX researchers can use to evaluate the recordings of users while they interact with your design or tools. Right. So for anyone who's very very tech savvy here, there's something called log or console in Google Chrome, where if you go to inspect mode, right, you would see possible errors and the codes that are making your site work, right? So think about these log analysis also in that way, that every time the users log into the app, right, there's an array of data that the backend folks can see. Do you understand? So every maybe at every particular period, they can go through those data and actually see if some people are experiencing some errors in backend, or everything is loading fine for everyone, right? So basically, this is just evaluating the recordings of the interactions that people are having with your product and seeing if everything is going smoothly, or if people are facing problems that they can't start complaining about. All right, so these are the methods that we're going to be talking about under the three types of user research that we're going to be covering. And I really do hope that you've been able to get an in-depth understanding of these basics, because like I said, these are we're teaching you the basics, right? This topic is extremely broad. It's not something that can be covered in one sitting, right? So but these are the basics. Once you understand these, it's going to be easier for you to understand the remaining aspects. So I hope you've been able to get the basics. Don't forget that user research is all about studying your users, studying them. And then when we're talking about studying your users, there are two subtexts. There is the qualitative research and the quantitative research. Qualitative research focuses more on the quality of the data that you're getting, while quantitative research focuses more on volume, right? That's why that's why for things like qualitative research, you'll be thinking of focus groups where you're paying all your attention to a select group of, say, like 8 people to use your product while you observe them. And then there is the approach of sending out surveys, where you can send out one survey with the exact same questions to hundreds or thousands of people to fill, and then you get a massive load of data that can be, measured, that can be arranged, that can be turned into charts and everything. When it comes to qualitative research, you can't really measure the data like you can measure quantitative data, right? Because these are more in depth, these are more detailed. So those kind of data takes time to sort through. And then we talked about the different types of user research. We covered the foundational research, which is the research that is done before designing. We covered the design research, which is design that is done during the design process. And we just covered the post-launch research, which is the research that is done after your product has been designed and launched. Yeah, before we round up, we're just going to be talking about some qualities of good UX researchers. Now, the reason why we're talking about it is that you need to understand the qualities that you need to embody for you to become a great UX researcher, and that's what you should all aim to become. So the question is, what are these qualities? Number one, empathy. You need to be able to understand the feelings or thoughts of someone else in a situation. You need to be able to put yourself in people's shoes. If you're trying to solve a problem for people and you can't put yourself in their shoes, you'll not be able to solve the problem properly. You need to actually feel what they're feeling, understand what they're going through, so they can solve the problem for them. That's why sometimes you notice that solutions to problems in a country are mostly, solved by people in that country. Right. It's easy for someone from Nigeria to solve a problem that's relating to Nigeria than it is for someone that is outside the country to solve it. And that's how these things work. Because someone from here would understand how things are here, and then they will be able to use their learnings and understanding and put that into the product and actually do something that can work for the people here. Right. And then there's pragmatism. Right. So this is a practical approach. Pragmatic people are practical people. They don't assume, like they like being realistic. Like, this is it. Like they don't start talking in assumptions, right? So if you want to be a great UX researcher, you need to practice a practical approach to problem solving, right? Be realistic with yourself, be true to yourself. Don't get carried away by what you're feeling. Then good UX researchers are good collaborators. I'd mentioned this in one of the other calls that we had to, that in order for you to really scale and grow, you need to be able to collaborate. And the same thing goes, in order for you to actually reach out to people, to actually conduct researches, to actually ask them questions and get feedback, you need to be a good collaborator. Because if you don't have the ability to work with a wide range of people and personalities and work styles, then it's going to be a serious problem. All right. And last but not least, definitely not least, is flexibility. Be flexible enough to take feedback. I've said this quite a number of times, right? It's very easy for designers to get carried away with their work. Like they design something and then they attach to it. They don't want to switch from it. They don't want to divert. They don't want to do anything. But it doesn't really work that way. It doesn't really work that way. You need to be flexible. You need to be able to take feedback. You need to be open minded, right? You need to understand that even though you are passionate about an idea, you need other people to tell you, oh, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Basically, you need other people to push you to think differently, because it's very, very easy to think inside the box. You need other people to push you to think outside it. If someone does not reject a version one, you'll not be pushed to make a version two. All right. So you need to be flexible enough to take feedback and actually be ready to push differently. Okay, I would like to end this session where I started it, with another quote, and this one says, "Feedback is the food of champions. Stay open-minded and be willing to listen to other people's opinion about your design." I think this is simply put. It's just basically just reiterating what I just said. Right? Be flexible enough to take feedback and stay open-minded and be willing to hear other people's opinions about your design. All right. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have been able to pick a couple of things from this session. We're definitely going to up on a general call on Wednesday to talk. I'm saying on Wednesday, I say Wednesday is not tomorrow, to talk more about this. But yes, we hope you'll be able to learn something. See you guys on the call tomorrow. Cheers.